Hi, everyone. My name is Sushant Rabra. I'm a partner with KPMG. It's my honor and privilege to welcome you all to today's session, which is focused on Industry 4.0. We have read a lot of reports around the opportunities that Industry 4.0 brings to the table. By some estimates, it's going to add as much as 400 to 500 billion dollars to the global economic value added in the next 3 to 5 years. Well, that all looks like a large opportunity for all of us, even more so for a country like India, where we are looking at solving innovative problems through innovative solutions. Now, today with us, we have Mr. Anil Nair, who is the managing director of Cisco, joining us in the session today and sharing his perspective on the topic. May I welcome Mr. Anil Nair onto this session today?
Hi, everybody, and hello, Sushant. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
The honor is all mine, Anil. It's not every day that you get to talk to senior leaders of the field who actually have been setting the agenda for digital transformation across sectors. In fact, while I was talking to the audience and I mentioned about your role in Cisco, I would like to know more about it. Country digital acceleration. I would like to know more about the work that you and your team do.
Sure. So, when you say country digital acceleration, that itself is a mouthful. And it's about actually changing the growth trajectory for the business in the various countries that we operate in. So, we work very closely with government, with industry, with academia, and we search for spaces in the which is part of the country's digital agenda where we can create very exciting proofs of concept, because when you show the outcomes, that's what invites the investment. So that's the game plan, that's what we do, and I do it across 8 countries.
Well, I'm sure that's keeping you busy.
Very.
Uh, for those who are listening to us today and watching us, it's not just these 8 countries which keep Anil busy. He's also a very prolific writer. He has been penning articles on topics ranging from digital to social problems and solutions around that. Anil, I was not aware of that side of work that you do. Would you like to talk more about it?
Yeah, I think a few months ago, I mean, I used to write many years ago, but a few months ago, a bank approached me and said that, why don't you write in our journal, which goes out to customers? And that sort of got the ball rolling. And so I've written one set of articles which is all about digital transformation. I wrote two on agriculture. One was about a project that we did, and some of the other projects that we're doing in other countries. A second was about how do you use digital to enable policy, to make sure execution happens. And then I've written one on healthcare, and there's another one around the corner on transportation. On the other hand, you will find a lot of frivolous articles, and one of them was about the revenge of the introvert, which is all about what's happening, in the COVID situation in a world made for extroverts. Suddenly, the equation seems to be favoring the introverts. So it's all about that.
I wonder how do you find time to do all of that and more, Anil? Maybe I'll exchange notes on how to manage and pack so many things in a day sometime after this discussion.
Makes for an
Coming closer
interesting
to the
fight.
core, absolutely, absolutely, Anil. Now, coming to the core topic that we are discussing today on Industry 4.0, and as I said, different analysts have different views on it. Somebody says $300 billion, somebody says half a trillion. Of course, it's all about throwing a dart, right, on a long-term basis. But I think one thing everybody agrees on, there is a large opportunity on the table. And that's something that we see, let's say, from a high level. Now, when you get down to from 30,000 feet to 30 feet level, and we talk to a lot of clients that we work with, they say, yes, we have seen certain value in some of the projects, some of the POCs, and others, things are still evolving, right? So we wanted to take your thoughts on what are those sectors or use cases where Industry 4.0 has demonstrated value or is expected to demonstrate a lot of value in the near future?
So clearly, when you look at digital transformation, of which Industry 4.0 is a very important part, whenever we undertake uh, these transformations, three things happen. There's an economic change, and there is a social change, and there is an environmental change, and it's for the better. Now, when we talk about economic, it means that when we do these projects, you see an increase in revenue, you will see a reduction in costs, you will see improvement in the people and assets productivity. When you look at the social aspects, you will see that the safety indicators improve, knowledge sharing happens, there's innovation that's happening. And when you look at environment, you're saying we're going to be able to cut waste, we're going to see a difference in the pollution parameters. So there is a substantial change happening in these three areas, and the delta is significant. So let me give you a few examples to illustrate that. For instance, we're doing a project with a factory where they're using visual, they're using visuals using the camera for defect detection. So you can imagine how it speeds up the whole quality process and improves the metrics around it. We're doing a project with a power equipment manufacturer. So it's a very simple IoT intervention, industrial IoT intervention. So we get the details. We know that the equipment keeps running. We know that whenever it has to be maintained, we know about it in advance. So there are no power outages. And more importantly, when they sell the equipment to their customers, they're able to have full visibility about its performance, and they can build a whole service line around it. So that's the second. A third would be, for instance, we see a lot of automotive manufacturers now using the cloud. The car has become like a data center. But the interesting thing is that they're using the cloud and not just for information regarding the vehicle itself, but also connecting them to the home automation system, for instance, or giving them media feeds. So I think it's changing the equation as far as cars go. And then finally, you have an example of augmented reality, where there's a company manufacturing aircraft engines, and the engineers constantly had to look up all these manuals because there were so many changes happening. And within their field of vision, they could actually flip through the information. If they needed an expert to help them with a voice command, they could summon the expert. So I think there are tremendous changes happening in this firmament, and we are seeing exciting things happen, and we're happy to be able to participate in that journey where value is really being created.
I think those examples are absolutely spot on. So car being like a server on wheels, actually, than the automobile of yesteryears, and the artificial intelligence, augmented reality examples that you gave, they are absolutely bang on, and they are creating real life value for clients, top line or bottom line. So what I hear you say is that there are many areas where the value case has been created, demonstrated, and it's ready for adoption. And there are some others where possibly still things are still in the kitchen and not yet been served, but it's looking fairly well. Now,
Yeah, I think in terms of companies, there are various stages, but there's no question that we are clearly moving towards positive outcomes.
perfect. So I would like to then take your thoughts on the entire enabling layer to make that revolution happen in India, right? Now, we have seen countries, for example, Germany, which adopted Industry 4.0 a few years ago, especially for the mid-sized businesses, and it has led to tremendous value for the economy. And they have created global giants out of Mittelstand. But if you were to look closer home in India and look at the various enabling layers, be it talent, be it standards, or even the entire ecosystem, I wanted to take your thoughts on where do we stand and what is the way forward from here.
Yeah, so I think it's a vast canvas. So maybe let me talk about a few of them. One is sensorization. We've got equipment and we've enabled it with sensors, and now the machines are beginning to talk, and we're getting a lot of information. But the enablement happens because of big data and artificial intelligence, all that, because there's so much of information being spewed out, it's important to make meaning out of it. And I think the first enabler is big data, artificial intelligence, etc., which is changing the landscape. The second is that, we all know about IT and OT, you know, and the integration of information technology and operation technology. That's all very good. It's been happening for a while. But, for it to happen safely and securely is the second enabler, and therefore we've got to look at the cybersecurity angles. Because when you look at the threat canvas, it has become so widespread. You're talking about rogue nations, you're talking about cyber criminals, you're talking about nation states, terrorists, and so on and so forth. So it's very, very important to understand what these people do with the information. And you will never get a peaceful night's sleep if you don't secure your system. And therefore, they want to steal the data, which means you could be subject to ransom. They could disrupt your operational system, which means it's going to make it uncompetitive for you. Or they're just gaining knowledge, industrial espionage, as it were. So if we know that all these things are going to happen and these are the implications, it's important that we ask ourselves that are we giving enough attention to cybersecurity? Can we afford to ignore it? And the cost of doing that can be extremely high. And finally, what happens when an attack happens? Do you have an audit trail? Have you covered yourself on the insurance aspects? So all of these angles, I think fixing the cybersecurity part is the second enabler. Having it working well is a great enabler. And the third, of course, is that I would talk about would be 5G. It's changing the picture. We're doing a lot of projects across APJC, and one in practically each of the 8 countries that we're in. And everybody recognizes that the speeds are going to be much faster, 20 times faster maybe. It opens up new applications where other modes have failed. We see wide usage, maybe 70 billion devices all connected to each other by 2025. We see data transfer being much, much easier from control units and sensors in a 5G environment. And the capability of handling big data, high density information, high resolution pictures, all of that going up with 5G. And also very interesting developments in new generation Wi-Fi 6, and so on and so forth. So those are the 3 big items that I would focus on in this conversation.
Thanks, Anil, for sharing that. In fact, when I look at these numbers, they feel completely unfathomable, right? Billions of devices, speeds which are multi-times what we see already, use cases which number into hundreds. We have a lot of people today listening to this, and many of them are business leaders in the respective organizations, right? Some of them have already walked this journey to a certain degree. Others are figuring out how to move forward. If they were to reach out to you and take your advice, what are the 3 things they should keep in mind while developing their own roadmaps as they're charting course on Industry 4.0? What would your advice be?
So I think the first would be creating awareness. There's a very interesting book, and it's called The Digital Vortex. It's written by professors in IMD Lausanne. And it talks about industries being part of that vortex, and they're all being drawn into the center because of the digital disruption that's happening across the world. And when you read the book, and many others like that, you realize that every industry is going to get affected. And as they crash into the middle, industries are colliding with each other, they're combining, and some industries are even disappearing altogether. And actually, IT is at the heart of it, where maximum change is happening. So it's a very interesting book, but it shows us that the world is changing very, very fast, and it's important for all our people in our organizations to know that change is happening at a very rapid pace. So if you look at India, we're somewhere between industry 3.0 and 4.0. You know, and various industries. There are some which are more advanced, like if you look at process industries or FMCG or pharma, we're probably reasonably advanced. If you see, there are some industries in between, like transport, logistics, retail, BFSI. And if you look at the ones that maybe are low on the scale, they would include utilities, because the moment they connect with IT, their vulnerabilities increase. So there is a different perception there. And of course, if you look at the medium and small scale industries, they need support because their perception is that it is expensive, and maybe the entry level costs need to be looked at in an imaginative way. And the second part of the first point, as it were, is that we therefore have to reskill our people. So build the awareness and reskill them appropriately for this new world that we're in. The second would be that we need to relook at our IT foundation, because in a digital world, you need to look at where are you going to store the data, how are you going to move the data, how are you going to analyze the data, and how are you going to protect the data. And all of that becomes very, very important. So the second thing would be relook and look at what you need to be able to get to the next level for the digital transformation to take place. And the third would be the very process of digital transformation. Companies should not undertake the journey because somebody else is doing that. There has to be a clear purpose for digital transformation, and there has to be a clear purpose for every project that is undertaken under digital transformation. And clearly, the tone at the top is going to make a big difference. And so let me give you an example. We were working with this mining company, and we noticed that it was a very simple problem, that when the trucks took these large boulders, and when these boulders went on to the mining process line, the crushers came to a stop because of these large boulders. So the very simple industrial IoT intervention, we were able to eject these boulders and save them millions of dollars. So, the competitiveness of countries, in this case it was Australia themselves were looking at mining and saying that we're losing our competitiveness because there are other countries that are getting much smarter at this, like the US and China and Brazil. So 220,000 workers are there in mines. And it's not just confined to Australia. We're doing very good work in India as well. For instance, establishing connections or connects with miners who are almost a kilometer below the earth, and connecting them with their command center makes all the difference. The traffic that happens, when these trucks carrying the mined, whatever it might be, to the surface to ensure that there are no accidents. So there's a lot of exciting things happening. But the rule here is make sure that whatever you're doing, not just the purpose of the transformation itself, but the purpose of each project is analyzed, so that you can break it down, you can follow it, you can pursue it, and you can see the results soon enough. That's what I would say.
Thank you. I think very well articulated. And for our audience here who's listening to us, I'm sure that gives them a clear sense of direction on what to look out for. So, of course, look for the stars, but take a first step. And these are things that you should keep in mind while taking these first steps. Anil, this has been a wonderful conversation today. As Fireside Chat, we started looking at the value and then the enablers from a country perspective, and then coming down to an organization and making it real for people to create that value as we have envisioned. This is an outstanding, and I would say everyone here would have many takeaways from the conversation today and you sharing your wisdom with them. I, for one, apart from the points that you mentioned, I'm going to use that with your permission sometime later. I would also look forward to the articles and writings from your side. Some of the thoughts that you brought out, which have wider implications, not just from a business perspective, but also from the social perspective, or the hard problems that need or are worth solving, I think those are also very, very important, in my opinion. So I would like to thank you once more for joining us on this platform, and I hope to stay connected with you this journey.
Thank you very much, and look forward to an article on Industry 4.0.
Thank you so much, Anil. Thank you.
Thank you. All the best. Bye.